This ad is somewhat emblematic of everything Ron DeSantis did wrong.
I don't think the ad is bad per se. The challenge is it's just like not really working for her.
Welcome to Political Experts React, where we break down political ads and media, explain what the people behind them are trying to accomplish, and decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama. And joining me today is former White House press secretary and MSNBC host Jen Psaki. She'll be part of MSNBC's special coverage of the New Hampshire primary on January 22nd and 23rd. Jen Psaki, welcome to Political Experts React. How are you?
I'm so excited to be here. As a listener, I always like hearing your breakdown.
So you survived Iowa. You're headed to New Hampshire.
Yes.
You feeling good about it?
You know, Dan, I have had the same coat since I bought it to move to Chicago and work on the Obama campaign.
I remember that coat, actually, yes.
It's still with me. But yeah, I think I'm ready. It'll just be interesting to be on the ground. It feels a little bit different, shall we say, than our days.
I imagine that would be the case.
Yes, but I'm heading there on Saturday.
All right, so we're going to break down some ads. These are ads from people and PACs trying to defeat Donald Trump in the Republican primary. We're doing this now because depending on what happens in New Hampshire on Tuesday, this may be our last chance. So we're going to start with an ad from the Republican Accountability Project that ran on the anniversary of January 6th.
You have to get your people to fight.
President Trump is responsible for provoking the events of the day.
And we fight. We fight like hell.
The president's language and rhetoric crossed a line, and it was reckless.
We will never concede. You don't concede when there's theft involved.
This is the cost of telling thousands of people that there is a legitimate shot of overturning the election.
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Republican Accountability PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
I should note that this ad was run on Fox News, so obviously targeting Republican voters. What do you think about the effort to use January 6th as a way to remind voters about Trump, to move voters against him in this primary?
I think it's powerful visually. It's like gives people this sense of chaos and obviously the violence, which most people are against, but also the chaos that Trump leadership incurs. What is also good about that ad, I thought, is using the words of some of his supporters against him, essentially, even though it's not up to date. The Mike Gallagher part I thought was a little odd. I mean, just because most people either don't know who he is, or if they know who he is, he's kind of seen as a never Trumper, but I think it would have been better without that. But the Ted Cruz part, pretty good. Mitch McConnell, I mean, it's fine.
Kind of a rhino to some people, yeah.
A rhino to some people, but I actually think it's quite powerful to remind people visually of that day, the chaos of that day, and what it could be bringing back upon us.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to help you win a Republican primary, probably. And as you can tell, this is from the Republican Accountability Project with Sarah Longwell's group. She has a very deep understanding of how Republican voters process information. And if it was just a bunch of news anchors, no offense to a news anchor here, that's not going to be particularly influential with Republican voters. But if it is Republicans, you know, people they identify with, like Ted Cruz, you could have done this with Kevin McCarthy or a bunch of other Republicans to probably make it more powerful. There is a public service here, which is January 6th has been memory hold by Republican voters, right? In the Washington Post poll that came out on the anniversary of January 6th, the number of Republicans who hold Trump primarily responsible for January 6th has been cut in half in the last 3 years. And so there is something that I think has some utility to get people remembering that day, how they felt that day. So bringing it back there is powerful. All of this stuff has a little bit of a fantasy politics element given the size of his lead, but I understand the strategy behind this.
Even since we're kind of in the days after Iowa, even if you look at those entry polls, which were depressing in many ways, but if you look at the optimistic side of it, I mean, the hardcore Republican caucus goers, not that many people as we saw, a third of them think Joe Biden was legitimately elected, right? A third of them wouldn't support Trump if he was convicted. So there are elements of the party, even the hardcore conservatives, who maybe, if you remind them of, you know, the chaos and violence of that day, will think twice about supporting him.
Yeah, it's almost a process of beginning to walk some number of Nikki Haley voters towards supporting Biden in the general.
Come on over. The water's fine.
Remember why you didn't like this guy in the first place? Come
Right.
over to us. I guess it's Nikki Haley voters. It's Republican-leaning independents. You know, you hear this in focus groups, you see it in polls, is that the people who went Trump in 16, Biden in 20, we are bleeding a lot of those people right now, and we can kind of afford to bleed none of them in some of these battleground states. And so this is one way to bring them back. So I think that's smart.
That surprising chunk of people who still don't think Trump is going to be the nominee, they're maybe ripe for picking, hopefully.
Okay, the next ad we're going to watch is very interesting because it's an actual attack against Donald Trump from Ron DeSantis' super PAC.
Greetings from Florida.
In 2024, we have a choice. One man worked his way through Yale and Harvard Law. One did not. One volunteered to serve his nation in wartime. One did not. One man stood up to Fauci and fought for freedom. One did not. One man won historic re-election, and one did not. One man is the right man to defeat Joe Biden. Ron DeSantis, President. Never Back Down Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Let's put aside the fact that Ron DeSantis' team waited until he had basically and functionally lost the race to make an argument against the guy who was beating him. But what do you think of this ad and the decision not to say Trump's name?
Well, the ad is a little bit like a riddle, right? I mean, we know who it is, right? Yeah. We know. So not naming Trump from the super PAC feels a little strange as a tactic. Now, that being said, we also, I would say, in the messaging of the Republican primary, we've also seen that you're a little bit damned if you do and damned if you don't, right? Because look at Chris Christie. He went and took him on. He had net negative support, and he was like the biggest attack dog. So the way to attack Trump, I'm not saying is like an easy question, but it felt a little obscure to me. What's interesting to your point is that Ron DeSantis, over the last week or two or a couple weeks, has actually kind of come around to actually more frontally attacking Trump in different ways, not how maybe all of us would like to see it. But he did say this past weekend during a Sunday interview that if Trump was nominated, Biden would be leading him in swing states, right? Now, if he'd said that a few months ago, people would have covered it and paid attention. And now it's like, well, he doesn't have a path forward. Who cares? So I don't know. It felt a little bit like an obscure riddle to me watching that ad. But what did you think?
Yeah, I think it's just you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound.
Yeah.
You're not getting any points for subtlety here. You're going to get the same conversation around the ad, whether you mention the name or not. The other thing that I think is a failure to understand how people consume TV now, which is you can't be subtle anymore. People are looking at their phone. They're trying to skip the commercial. You have to just like look at it and in like 6 seconds be able to pick up what's happening, even if you don't see the words. You're not reading the words on the chyrons. There's no point in subtlety. And
being so subtle. Yeah.
This ad is somewhat emblematic of everything Ron DeSantis did wrong, which is he's just stuck in like strategic limbo at all times. Am I attacking him? Am I not attacking him? Am I MAGA? Am I not MAGA? Am I more MAGA? Am I moderate MAGA? It's just like make a decision and go for it. And he just doesn't have the self-confidence, either himself or his campaign team, to do that. And I think this ad's emblematic of that.
It's so true. It's almost like watching that ad. It's like I was rooting for him. Like, who is it? Are you going to say it?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly
like,
right.
I know who it is, but it's like you wanted there to be a moment where it's delivered. Like, it's Donald Trump. He's none of those things. But instead the ad ends and you're like, oh, okay.
It's just like visuals, and it's bad. Okay. I cannot recommend anything more than the one product I use every time I drink, ZBiotics. ZBiotics is a pre-alcohol probiotic drink and the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember, and I cannot emphasize this enough, make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. All right, people, the 2024 election is here. I know you've been dreading it for, 4 years now. But the fact that we're going to spend every single day looking at the polls, worrying about who's going to win, means that many of you, myself included, are probably going to try to soften the edges with a little drinking. Maybe a glass of wine, a beer, a cocktail. Go to ZBiotics.com/experts to get 15% off your first order when you use experts at checkout. ZBiotics is back with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, and I can't imagine what that would be, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring this video. The last ad we're going to watch is from Nikki Haley.
The two most disliked politicians in America, Trump and Biden, both are consumed by chaos, negativity, and grievances of the past. The better choice for a better America? Nikki Haley.
I have a different style and approach. I'll fix our economy, close our border, and strengthen the cause of freedom. We need a new generation of conservative leadership to get it done. I'm Nikki Haley, and I approve this message.
This ad, which has actually been up for a little bit, is the crux of the message that Haley gave in her quasi-concession / actually third place is second place speech that she gave in Iowa. What do you think?
I mean, one, there were some things in there that sounded like poll testy to me, right? Just not normal vernacular or normal language. I mean, things like grievances of the past is like, they're old, right? And maybe that's the purpose. So, I mean, this has been her argument. I don't think the ad is bad per se. I mean, just like I don't think her speech the other night was bad. There were elements of it that were good. That is her argument, right? And she is a pretty good speaker. The challenge is it's just like not really working for her, right? I guess my main question watching that is who is the audience of that ad, right? And I think it's independents, presumably, because you start out and it's like, people hate both of these people, right? Even though tens of millions of people voted for one or the other of them, right? But it is true, they're both unpopular in the larger electorate as of now, all relatively speaking, in different ways for different reasons. So I thought it was okay, fine. I thought her speech the other night was fine, but also it doesn't feel like a message that's connecting at all with voters.
That is how you could describe Nikki Haley in her entire campaign, is it's fine. And that's good enough for second in a campaign cycle where everyone other than Trump has run just an embarrassingly clown car campaign, right? It's just, they've all been so bad. And hers is fine. It's like, it's Nikki Haley. It's competent. It's inoffensive in a lot of ways. We know from the Iowa entrance polls that 2/3 of Republicans think Donald Trump actually won the election. That's always been the problem, is the 2020 big lie stuff. But even still, Donald Trump has convinced Republicans that he is going to win if he is the nominee. Maybe if she had been building an argument for, like, the other way to look at that argument is it's about change, right? We've been stuck in this Trump v. Biden reliving 2020 argument for, and it's basically...
And generational.
Yeah, generational, right? They're old. I'm a spry mid-50s politician, you know, on a relative basis. She's quite young compared to everyone else. Like, she could do a generational change argument, but she just didn't do it until now. And that's the problem. I mean, this is the problem with all of these things. That's why there probably may have been no strategy that would work, is Republicans love Donald Trump.
Yes.
They liked when he was president. They like being at his rallies. They like that he's in charge. They don't want change, right? It's like she's selling new Coke to people who love Coke Classic, right? That's sort of what it is.
It's also, I mean, and you sort of said this, it's like that ad and sometimes how she speaks is emblematic of why she would not be an amazing general election candidate, because she kind of says nothing and everything, right? She's a good debater in part because that forum is like, spit out my 90 seconds and then have a good comeback. It's not a 30-minute interview about abortion, right? Or about any issue, because she kind of tries to have it every which way on a number of issues, which is like not viable.
It's very old politics. It all feels very like she was in the 2012 primary. And
Born in the wrong era.
Yeah, right. She's talking like a typical politician. She's acting like a typical politician. That ad is very typical politician-y. And just politics has changed so much since then, particularly on the Republican side, where it's now all about entertainment and personality and getting attentions. And she has never adjusted to that. She's run a good enough campaign to survive long enough to this moment. And maybe, you know, we'll all look like fools in 4 months if she's the nominee, but that's low on my list of reasons I'll end up looking like a fool in 4 months is my guess. But
same here.
So the ad is, as we would say, fine.
It's fine. Exactly. It's a good ad for somebody who may want to be vice president.
Yes,
sort of.
yes, I guess. Know? Or be on the board of Raytheon. I don't know. Anywho.
Who knows? Either way.
Yes. Jen Psaki, thank you so much for joining us. And good luck in New Hampshire.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you have anything you'd like us to break down, let us know in the comments. See you all next time.